So apparently people don't seem to like Radio Rebel all that much. What did I learn that fact this weekend? Just in case anyone's concerned, this is very obviously all makeup. Don't worry, I'm perfectly fine. Nor am I trying to insinuate that I've been beat up over Radio Rebel discourse, although I hope one day to encounter something like that. Radio Rebel has been the internet's punching bag for at least 3 years now, but definitely also for longer. I think the pandemic really did kind of make a spark ignite in the Radio Rebel discourse, and I'm here to contribute to it, but not in the way the most traditional of YouTubers would. Radio Rebel is one of my favorite Disney Channel original movies, and since I am now embarking on the dcom era of my channel, all leading up to the big video where I rank and review every single dcom, which there's over 100 by the way, I figured I would talk about some movies that I have a lot more to say about than just in a small little segment in a larger video. So welcome to episode 1 of that. We're about to embark on a channel-wide series together, and, there will be non-decom related videos coming out on the channel, but that's mainly what we're going to be focusing on going forward. I jokingly made myself look like I got beat up to kind of represent how it feels to look up Radio Rebel and try to find, information about it, and to just be bombarded with wide amounts of hate. And I think many would say that, it does deserve the hate because it's a bad movie. And to that I say, have you watched it? So let me get washed up and we'll talk about Radio Rebel. Let's go. Okay. So just in case who's watching this video hasn't heard of Radio Rebel or just doesn't remember the plot, allow me to do a brief run through of what happened so we can all be caught up. Originally, I thought it'd be very funny if I just refused to give any context to the video and just went right into explaining everything, which is kind of what I did with my Sunny with a Chance video, but I understand that might leave people confused, so here we go. The movie starts with edgy radio girl Tara Adams as she cosplays as a deep podcaster named Radio Rebel in her free time, who all the teens at her school listen to on the internet. Radio Rebel is confident, cool, and knows exactly what to say to get the people going, unlike Tara Adams, who can barely speak a word to any person other than her friends Ed, and Eddie. Their real names are Audrey Shawarma and fraternal twin brothers Barry and Larry. Tara's shyness is what causes extreme misfortune when Audrey tries to talk to popular girl Stacy and gets the principal called on them. Apparently, Radio Rebel is going around convincing all the losers to quote-unquote reject the status quo, which I bet is really revolutionary to a teenager and child decom watchers, but for adults is inconveniently inevitable. The principal of the school has a no distraction policy and confiscates any and all electronic devices that could be used to listen to music. The principal also seems to favor the popular kids more than the music listening unpops, since she completely ignores the fact that Stacy is using her cell phone while taking Audrey and Tara's MP3 players. There's a B-plot happening in the background, this movie revolving around Stacy and this up-and-coming band called The G's. The G's are composed of White Lotus star Gavin and groomer Gabe, along with 2 unnamed background characters who never say a word. I'm just going to assume that their names start with G as well. Gabe and Gavin are really good friends, and because of their band gaining traction on the internet, they are slowly rising in popularity at school. This popularity is noted when Stacy, who just broke up with her college boyfriend, is in need of a prom date this year and is extremely casually, and not in a planned way at all, walking next to Gavin in the hallway and has a brief conversation with him. Gabe tells his friend he needs to ask out Stacy to prom, since he's all about popularity and being famous, while Gavin just wants to play his acoustic guitar and chill. These 2 characteristics won't clash at all throughout the film, not one bit. In Tara's theater class, they're going to combine with another class to do a group project together, and this other class has both Audrey and Gavin in it. And we find out that Tara has had a crush on Gavin for a very long time.
You could talk to him. You've had a crush on him since, the first Harry Potter movie.
Tara's class originally had Stacy in it, but now her friend and lackey, Kim, will be there too. Gavin makes quick work to ask Stacy to prom now that they're sitting next to each other, and the teacher calls on Tara to write something on the board, which is one of the worst things that could ever happen to her. She embarrasses herself in front of the class, and everyone laughs at her. awful time all around. After school, Radio Rebel is doing her broadcast via the internet from her bedroom when her stepfather, who happens to run the local radio station Slam FM, hears about Radio Rebel's podcast and thinks it would be a great addition to the network to get more younger listeners. Tara's mom forces bonding time on the both of them, and through a slip-up, Tara's identity is revealed to her stepdad while she's on the air. He immediately hires her on the spot, and she freaks out, which is a pretty realistic reaction, honestly. Tara feels guilty about not telling Audrey her secret and goes off to rebel some radio at Slam FM. At first, she's very shy and feels like she's going to mess everything up, but with a pep talk from her broadcast assistant Cami Q, Debbie Ryan is able to overact her way into slaying her first radio broadcast on a real station. She tells everyone to wear red the next day to prove that they listened to her first radio show broadcast, and we see the school is painted red in Radio Rebel's honor. Audrey is offended because it looks like Tara blew her off for no reason since she listened to radio the day before, and she said she was going to be busy, so this rift is caused by Tara having to keep up the lie, and is resolved when she inevitably tells Audrey. Gavin, Tara, and Stacy are in a group together, and while Gavin and Tara are rehearsing a scene for the project, Gavin is a manic pixie dream girl klutz and dumps his CD of the G's new demo onto the floor. Tara picks it up and plays it on the air that following night. She's also incorporating more actual rebelling into her shows by telling everyone to get up and dance at 8 a.m. no matter where they are. They also get the G's demo to play over the school's intercom at 8 a.m. the next day, which is never explained, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Later at lunch, Gavin questions Tara as to how Radio Rebel got this demo when she's the one who most likely picked it up, and she stumbles her way through an excuse. This is when Gavin is also revealed to have a low-key crush on Radio Rebel. Get in line, buddy, she's mine. Apparently, Tara's show is really popular because Slam FM starts advertising the hell out of her, which means that she has a hard time sneaking into the building without being recognized. Later on in the film, she has to ask the guy in a sandwich costume to distract a ward of people outside so she can sneak away once the show is over. This influx of attention also causes Tara to get a bit of an ego. She first decides to host a dance party during lunchtime, only barely abiding by the laws by getting Cami Q to get a permit and to be parked on city property. Principal, who's been stealing everyone's MP3 players, has been getting more and more aggressive with her plight to stop Radio Rebel and her distraction-fraught lifestyle. But after this lunchtime fiasco, as she calls it, she plans to expel Radio Rebel when she's caught. Tara's stepdad finds out she's at risk of getting expelled and tells her she's rebelled way too much, but she stands up for her beliefs. The G's are rehearsing their new song when Gavin starts to feel iffy about it, saying that they should be making real music with a message and not soulless dance pop. Boy, would he love Royals by Lord. Anyways, Tara finds out she's been nominated for prom queen. Well, Radio Rebel is, so technically she hasn't. People only nominated her in hopes that she would win and reveal her identity at prom. Later on, Radio Rebel accepts calls on the shows and have people admit what they're most scared of, and the editors make one of the worst editing decisions of the entire film. Yeah, that's how I would have added emphasis to that scene too, guys. Real bang-up job all around. Her mom pressures her into going to prom and to be excited about possibly winning prom queen, even though if she just skipped the entire thing like she had planned to, there'd be no more problems. But that ends up not mattering, since the principal decides to cancel the prom until Radio Rebel reveals herself. This causes Tara to get extreme amounts of hate and backlash for her actions, which sends her into a spiral. This is until she gets the idea to have Slam throw their own prom for their school and call it MORP, because we love coming up with the most stupid names for things around here, apparently. Stacy is livid at the idea of MORP, and I'm actually on her side with this one, but Tara disses her in class as she's complaining, showing that Tara is starting to gain more confidence in her real life outside of just being Radio Rebel. This is inevitably what leads to her downfall. Stacy is hate listening to Radio Rebel that night, or I guess midday. Her show is supposed to run from 7 to 8, but it is bright as hell as she's driving around. I guess it is spring, so it does take a while for the sun to set, but that's besides the point. Stacy's hate listening when Radio Rebel makes a comment that is almost identical to the diss that Tara told her in class earlier that day. So Stacy does some investigative journalism and slowly pieces together Tara's secret. Stacy says that she needs proof, so she decides to have a party when Radio Rebel goes live and invites the entire school to try and catch Tara on her lie. Tara shows up and Stacy calls into the show, and we see Cami Q along with Tara's mom using preset audio to keep the show going. They patch Tara into the show, and she gets into a verbal spar with Stacy, and learns that Stacy used to be bullied in elementary school for dressing up as a princess to school every day. This is the reason why she cares about being prom queen so much, and how her hatred for Radio Rebel has grown since she's been nominated for prom queen, and has been revealed to her as Tara. The G's then perform their best song, We So Fly, at Stacy's party, and Tara stands up for her friend when Stacy is a dickhead to Audrey. After this, Stacy sends her minion to Slam FM to get evidence that Tara is Radio Rebel, and she does. She then uses this audio recording of the evidence to blackmail Tara to get her to promote Stacy as Morp Queen on the Radio Rebel show. Since she doesn't even want to get Tara expelled, she just wants to be prom queen. She then sabotages their final drama project by locking Tara in a closet for the performance. Earlier, Gavin was talking to Tara, and Gabe told him not to fraternize with the losers, and when he's looking for her so they can do their project, Gabe wigs out in the most stupid-looking outfit of all time. Gabe is completely unwarranted to blow up at Gavin like this for this reason. He's literally just looking for her because they need to do their final project now, and Gavin quits the band over this. Honestly, fair, since Gabe is acting like the most douchey of douchebags right now. Gavin finds out about Stacy's actions and decides not to go to prom with her over the situation. Now it's prom time. I mean Morp time. It's time for Morp. Of course, Radio Rebel wins prom queen, and Tara reveals herself. The principal is there and decides to expel her, but then the whole crowd pulls a Spartacus and admits that they are all Radio Rebel, and Tara gets off free. We'll talk more about this later. Tara gives the crown to Stacy after she also admits that she's Radio Rebel, and she buries the hatchet, because Tara is just happy Stacy's living her best life as a princess and is being herself. Good for her. Gavin plays his stupid fucking acoustic song, and I guess the G's get back together. He's also revealed as being the dancing sandwich guy from earlier, showing that for the back half of the movie, he's known Tara as Radio Rebel, and he asks her to Morp. She says yes. He kisses her on the cheek, what a gentleman, and the movie's over, yay! Y'all, this coffee is amazing. It's funny because it's literally from yesterday. Like, it is yesterday's coffee that I reheated because I didn't actually drink any yesterday. I made it and it just sat on the counter for the whole day. So, like, it's getting me pretty freaking zazzed, despite the fact. Now that we've gone over a brief run-through of the plot of this film, let's get a little bit more into reasons why I'm so obsessed with it. I wasn't originally going to film today, but I just decided, why not? I'm in the mood. Let's do some Radio Rebel discussion. The first point I want to make is that Gavin is fucking with his prom date. Early on in the film, we see that Gavin asks Stacy to prom, and he seems pretty sincere when he's doing it. Of course, he only really is doing it because his friend Gabe told him to, or at least put the idea in his mind. At first, he basically just seems like, oh, like, she's popular, I could never figure she would want to go to prom with me, but we find out that she does. So, like, he's probably very excited and bewildered at the fact that he can go to prom with her because she's very popular. But as the movie goes on, you start to pick up on the fact that, like, he doesn't like her all that much, and he doesn't really want to be with her or, like, hang out with her. He more wants to hang out with Tara. When Gavin, Stacy, and Tara get put in a Shakespeare group together, we see early on that he's just a really nice guy. Doesn't matter who you are, he's just going to be nice and kind to you. Because if he was like a stuck-up popular kid, he wouldn't want to talk to Tara. We see that's the case with Gabe. Gabe is like, there's no reason for you to be friends with Tara except for the fact that her stepfather runs the radio station, which means that, like, we can get our songs on the radio. So if Gavin was like Gabe, he would treat her like garbage. But we see that he's a nice guy and is just being nice to her because they're in a group together, and that's just what you do. You have human decency. But it starts to get to the point where it gets a little bit off, if that makes sense. Like, immediately off the top, Stacy is extremely jealous of Gavin talking to Tara, which to me at first didn't really make sense, but I mean, I guess is fine. Like, she doesn't want him kind of talking to any girl, so the fact that he's being nice to Tara, she's like put off against, and she has to remind Tara consistently, like, he is my prom date, by the way, just letting you know, you're my prom date. So, but then as the movie goes on, it's like he starts treating her kind of like crap, and, you know, it's important to remember that there's a distinction between when he knows Tara is Radio Rebel and when he doesn't. Because there's a certain point in the movie, I think it's around the halfway point in the middle, he finds out that Tara is Radio Rebel, and he doesn't say anything, he just keeps it a secret up until she reveals it herself, and he does his stupid fucking acoustic song that everyone hates. So it's like, Gavin's kind of treating Stacy like crap even before he knows that Tara is Radio Rebel, because once he finds out, he very clearly has a thing for Tara, but is just being very silent about it and very coy because, you know, the movie wants to have a twist reveal about whether he knows or not. And honestly, Gavin is just looking for an excuse to break up with Stacy. So before Gavin even knows that Tara is Radio Rebel, he is very clearly fucking with Stacy. And it's like, no wonder she's pissed off at Tara even before she also learns that she's Radio Rebel. In that cute little romantic scene where they're performing 12th Night, they're full on eye fucking each other in front of his prom date. And I guess this is something we should discuss. Is Gavin dating Stacy? He did ask her to prom, but like, does that mean that they're dating? I don't know. I really don't. When you ask somebody to prom, is that like exclusively like, I want to date you? Or if you're both two single people and you ask somebody to prom, do you like get to date other people? Or is that like taboo? I don't know how it works. I never went to prom. My school's prom was also canceled like it was in this movie. But a radio station didn't cobble together a new prom for our students once it happened. It just didn't happen. That's the reality for you. Is it okay for Gavin to be doing this with Tara when he's with Stacy? And is Stacy allowed to be jealous? I would say no and yes. I think Stacy has every right to be jealous because Gavin seems to like Tara a whole lot more than he likes her. Every time they're discussing, he's always trying to get her to do something and she's being a stick in the mud about it. But every time he communicates with Tara, they get along great. So I can understand why Stacy would be jealous of Tara in this sense, because Gavin clearly wants to be with her instead, but for whatever reason, he asked her to prom. The reason is that because his douchebag best friend decided, to convince him to, and Gavin probably thought it was a good idea at the beginning, but as he gets closer to Tara in this group project, he starts to learn to like Tara more. So there you go. I mean, a lot of it could just be swept under the rug as, like, him just being nice, because he doesn't outwardly say anything flirtatious towards her, and Tara isn't doing much back because she's extremely shy. If anything, a lot of his behavior towards her could just be him being very supportive and understanding of her shyness and trying to help her out in this group project because Stacy is a very demanding person. All the times he talks to her, it's just when they're rehearsing, and maybe he's just acting in that scene instead of them, having a moment. And outside of class, anytime he talks to her, it's mainly about the group project. Like, he comes up to her and says, hey, you want to run lines? And she walks away and out of embarrassment. And then when she steals his demo and plays it on the radio, he's like, what's up with that, huh? And he just says thank you and then admits that he has a crush on Radio Rebel to her and then fucks off. So it's like, maybe he wasn't doing anything bad. You can read it either way. His performance kind of leans in either direction, honestly, because there's multiple scenes where he's just clearly, like, friend-zoning her, but then there's also scenes where it's like he might have some romantic tension towards her. It's pretty interesting to think about either way. And then, like I said, Stacy is completely valid in her hatred towards Tara. In the beginning, it's literally just because she's a dickhead and she just likes being mean to people. But as the movie goes on, she has more and more reason to dislike Tara. We can just assume that Stacy is reading Gavin's actions as not as an act of kindness, but as an act of romantic interest. So in that sense, that's why she's jealous of Tara, which she should not be putting her anger out on the girl in the situation, because Tara clearly has a crush on him back. But, like, that's not... He's the one doing all of the interaction, so it's like you should be angry at him, really. Although maybe just the fact that she likes the guy that she's going to prom with is reason enough for her to be mad at her. Fine, whatever. That is why Stacy finds it ever so lucrative to then use blackmail on Tara when she finds out that she's Radio Rebel. A big thing we have to remember that happens throughout this movie is that to all these people, before people find out, Radio Rebel is a completely separate person and Tara is another. Stacy's hatred for Radio Rebel is just like mixed in with the slight discomfort and anger she has towards Tara into this ball of just like hate and despair that she has towards this person once she finds out. And also, Tara's a fucking idiot. She's the whole reason why Stacy finds out that she's Radio Rebel. Like, she's stupid. I guess she was so used to, like, people not noticing her as a person, and because she was so shy and literally could just not talk to anybody, that's why she didn't make slip-ups like this so often. But now that she's starting to gain a little more confidence as Tara through, her platform as Radio Rebel, she starts to slip up like this, because Tara says something like, my number one fan, or something, as like a joke to Stacy. And then she fucking says it as Radio Rebel on the radio, on air. And Stacy's listening, and puts two and two together. And Stacy's thorough. She's not just gonna run on that specific thing. She goes to her house and asks her mom where Tara is, and her mom's like, I don't know, couldn't tell ya, because she's literally doing the show at that moment in time. Like, Stacy's on top of it, you know? I mean, personally, I think the fact that Tara revealed where she goes to school in any way whatsoever is quite stupid. Like, she shouldn't have done that. But I realize for certain reasons we'll discuss later as to why they kind of had to do it like that. But like, it doesn't make sense as to why she did that. The reason why it doesn't make sense is because Tara, in her podcast, is performing as Radio Rebel on the internet. They never specifically describe, how she does this on the internet, whether she has her own website or not. That's what I just assumed, is that she had her own website that she would like live stream on, I guess. How she made that website, I do not know. Maybe she's on like an in-universe podcasting website, like, I was going to say SoundCloud, but that doesn't make sense because she's doing it live and everyone's listening to it live, so it can't be SoundCloud. I don't think SoundCloud has live streaming features. I know there are podcasting websites out there that people can create accounts on and then start making podcasts on, so let's just say she's doing one of those, I guess, because there's not really a lot of explanation over what it's doing. But people are listening like on their iPods and on their phones and stuff, not just on their computers. So still, it's quite confusing how she's podcasting over the internet live. But because of that, you can have complete anonymity. Like, people could be listening to you from all over the world. It's not like if she was on a radio show from the very beginning, they had to know locally where she was, and then because she had mentioned specific people in her episodes, not by name, but just by, like, character type, like, hobbies that they had, they were able to figure out which school she went to. Like, that would make sense if, like, her fans, like, deduced that. But she literally just, I think she said, like, Sherwood or something in the opening episode of the podcast when the movie starts. The school is called Lincoln Bay High, actually. I was wrong. I don't know where I got Sherwood from. I bet that's from, like, another stupid Disney Channel movie or something.
I think we'll give all of us at Lincoln Bay High an F.
Which is just, like, not logical at all, Tara. Why are you doing this? I guess she never really thought of it being, like a big deal. It was just something she was casually doing for fun, and then it just kind of snowballed into this big thing, especially when she moved into the actual radio station. I guess the 2012-ness of this movie makes it so her moving to an actual radio station instead of just doing it on the internet, like, a big deal, but we all agree that she very clearly, as the years would go on, have a lot more success as an internet podcaster than she would as a radio show host, right? Like, we all agree that that's the case. I was gonna make, like, a Google Plus joke, like, maybe she was live streaming on Google Plus, but I don't even think that was out yet in 2012. I think that's a 2013 thing. Although, now that I think about it, I completely forgot about satellite radio. Like, maybe she gets a show on Sirius XM or something once Slam FM goes under, because who fucking listens to radio anymore? I can just see Tara over time just, like, slowly, starting to go back into the internet sphere. Maybe she starts uploading sections of her radio show, like, on YouTube and Spotify and stuff. Eventually she'd make it to, like, YouTube Shorts and TikTok, who knows? I don't know how the music thing would work because of, like, copyright strikes and stuff. I guess she could only upload, like, the little clips in between songs or something. I don't know. Now Spotify has a feature where if you make a podcast, you can put songs in between and, like, truly recreate, like, a radio show experience. But, like, that's only a very recent thing. For a good few years, she would just be, like, in this weird limbo. Also, I guess I never thought about, like, how does copyright work on the internet for her radio show? Was she, like, illegally streaming all of this music that she downloaded on LimeWire or something? Like, that's something we didn't really think about, huh? I guess we can just assume she purchased all of the music she was playing on iTunes or something, but then I don't think she has the right to play the whole song in its entirety on whatever website she's on, right? There's a lot of issues with how her podcast worked on the internet. The only reason why I'm calling it a podcast is because that's what her stepdad calls it when he discovers her for the first time on his computer. He's like, check out this new podcast everyone's been listening to.
She told me I got to check out this new podcast girl. She's really something special.
Either way, I like Tara as a character. I do. Like, I think she's a very interesting personality, and I think the sort of like two personas she's created for herself in this movie to be very interesting. It's a cool element of the movie that, again, never gets talked about. You see that throughout the movie. Tara is sort of seeing herself and then Radio Rebel as two separate people, and as the movie goes on, she starts to accept the fact that they are one and the same. It seems to be that the Radio Rebel persona is who she truly feels like on the inside, yet because of her intense shyness, she has a hard time portraying that in her everyday life. Hence why the horribly edited "I wish I could be the real me" or "I'm afraid to be the real me" scene happens. It's because she's expressing that she wishes her Radio Rebel persona could be her in real life. And by the end of the movie, she does achieve that. I don't really know how or why she gets over her intense shyness. Maybe it's because of her quick beef with Stacy. I guess that could be the reason why, maybe. Throughout the film, she kind of seems to feel like she's in competition with herself, and I think that it's like a very noticeable character arc and shift that happens with her character throughout the movie. And I quite like it. I think it's quite nice to show Tara actually evolving throughout the movie, because I think originally when I was watching the whole thing, I kind of thought like, oh, she doesn't really change. Like, she starts the movie already confident in being Radio Rebel, and it's like the principal who has to, stop being nasty to be the person who gets her, out of the conflict. But really, she's kind of her own antagonist for a good chunk of the film. And so is Stacy, of course. And then, of course, the actual villain of the story is the principal. And the two characters are just like, antagonists, or playing antagonists in the story, but they aren't like the main threat. I sound like an absolute madman ranting to myself. My dog is just staring at me like, what are you doing? Another thing I quite like is the friend dynamic between Tara, Audrey, and Larry and Barry. The four of them actually have quite little screen time together, considering they're all supposed to be like a friend group, but when they were together, I thought they were very funny. Larry and Barry's whole thing is that they're obsessed with finding out the secret identity of Radio Rebel, and of course, it's Tara. And I just think it's very charming how around in the first scene of the movie, we see that Tara is just used to them talking about Radio Rebel. And at this point in the movie, they are trying to kind of keep it a mystery, like, oh, who is Radio Rebel? If like you've never seen the poster or any of the trailers, or you don't know who Debbie Ryan was, and you're like, I don't know if she's the main character or not. Like, if you were watching this movie completely blind, you wouldn't really know that Tara is Radio Rebel until they cut to her doing the show in her bedroom, like 15 minutes in. So it shows that, like, with her closest friends, like Audrey and Larry and Barry, she's gotten quite used to just, like, them talking about Radio Rebel around her and just kind of avoiding the subject altogether. I just think it's funny how when the twins are talking about Radio Rebel, Tara and Audrey kind of have to be, like, the straight men and kind of, like, gawk at their weirdness. But then when Tara tries to talk to literally anyone else in the whole world, it's funny to see Larry and Barry then become the straight men because they're completely confident in their personalities. I think like the 30-second lunch scene specifically, I think is really great because like Tara and Audrey are kind of in a fight right now and they're just like goofing around the whole time. They're clearly over having to like help Tara with her shyness and just kind of work with her. And I don't know, they had a lot of chemistry together. I thought it was really funny. I kind of wish we got more of like the friend group. But I get it because Tara is the main character, so like most of the movie revolves around just her. But maybe if they would have done more with Larry and Barry with Audrey and Tara and not just them by themselves, like basically trying to stalk Radio Rebel, I think that would have been cool. Another thing I quite like about this movie is the sort of 1980s aesthetic that they really laid on thick throughout the entire thing. It's most prominent in the morph scene where like literally everyone is dressed like they're in prom in 1983 or something. Just the entire vibe of that scene very much lends itself to a 1980s kind of high school flick, and I think that's quite cool. I know in general in the 2010s there was a lot of 1980s nostalgia, so fashion of that era already lends itself to looking very 1980s, but especially with the prom scene, like I said, I think it was intentional to give the entire movie this sort of homage to 1980s culture, because maybe it was trying to lean into that whole high school movie thing like John Hughes films. That's my best assumption. Either way, I enjoy it. It gives the movie like a very specific look that's easy to remember. And also, the song that Debbie Ryan did a cover for is from the 1980s, the cover of The Go-Go's We Got the Beat. I'll talk more about that later. Since we're talking about Morp, though, I think the Spartacus thing that they did is completely out of pocket and unnecessary. The most obvious thing to mention is that the actual story of Spartacus did not end the way that this movie does. In reality, they just killed everyone who said they were Spartacus. So, like, if it was actually gonna do the whole Spartacus thing, then everyone who said that they were Radio Rebel would have gotten expelled. I've been calling things kind of lazy in a lot of my videos, but I'm gonna try to refrain from that, because a lot of the time maybe they thought the idea actually was good and didn't try to elaborate more. It does work kind of thematically because Radio Rebel is inspiring the entire school. And I think what resonates with the fact that her identity is a secret and that anyone could be Radio Rebel is that, in turn, everyone is Radio Rebel. So by everyone saying that they are Radio Rebel at the end is proof that, you know, her identity is not just Tara, it's actually everybody's identity. So in that sense, maybe, but I don't think they cared about that when they threw this ending in, if I'm being completely honest. Again, there's some more details as to why I think this is so bad, but I will talk about it a little bit more later on in the video. Also, since Slam FM is running this Morp, and if they really wanted to keep Radio Rebel's identity a secret, they literally could have just rigged the whole Morp Queen thing. Stacy's whole thing is that she just wants to win Prom Queen, and if Tara really wanted to give her what she wanted, then she would just tell the people at Slam, hey, just make her prom queen, and then Tara could just go the rest of high school, which there's only a few months left because it's prom. She could just go the rest of high school without revealing her identity, and then she graduates, and then she can reveal her identity if she wants to. Just wait a few months. Or she should just reveal her identity like she did and just let her get expelled. I mean, she can get her GED. She clearly has a line of profession for herself. She does have a successful future in radio show hosting. I understand that the reason why they're holding Morp and not just like letting prom get canceled is because it is kind of a bad PR move for Radio Rebel. So holding the fake prom does kind of put her in good graces again with the public. But yeah, if she like actually wanted to graduate high school, do the whole cap and gown thing, then just don't have her win prom queen. Or even if she does win prom queen, she just shouldn't reveal her identity. But if she wants to reveal her identity at that point in time, then just let her get expelled. I understand it's a dcom, so they can't actually have the character get expelled for rebelling, because that might send a message to other kids to like, hey, go against the rules at your school and get expelled. It'll end up completely fine. Get that. I know that's why they didn't do it, but I wish for the idea of this movie where that could be the case. You know what I mean? Like, I have an image in my mind of this movie being, like, even PG instead of G, and that being the situation. So, there you go. Where was I? I forgot where I was. Took a little dog break, and I don't remember where I was last saying. You can see why, overall, I think that Radio Rebel is a fine movie. It does a lot of things that are interesting and unique. Most of the time, big blockbuster movies with like $200 million budgets don't do things that this movie is able to do. So in that regard, I like to give it the faintest of faint praise every once in a while. I know it's not a masterpiece or anything, but I love being there for the 6 out of 10s of the world. I think I said this in my video on the Charlie's Angels 2019 movie. It's not the best thing in the whole world, but it's also not as bad as people are saying it is, and I just immediately get defensive. So, multi-hour long video is necessary. This probably won't be an hour long, I hope at least. So yes, while I do praise a lot of what is in Radio Rebel, I do realize it has its flaws, and not just, the surface level stuff that people like to make fun of, which is completely fine. I don't know if I've clarified that yet. I have absolutely no issue with the fact that people like to make fun of this movie. I mean, it's all in good fun, right? Like, yes, Debbie Ryan's acting is extremely hilarious, but there are a few things that just make the movie a little bit worse. And over time, I've grown to kind of find them as fun little quirks of the film, but I could very easily see it being a reason why a lot of people don't like this movie. My whole goal with the video was just to show you guys the things that I really love about Radio Rebel and the reason why I like the movie so much. And one of the big things that recently has become kind of an obsession of mine is the music in Radio Rebel. So let's cut back to a time before I had cut my hair and talk about the music. Am I in focus? I'm so sorry if I'm out of focus. Coffee machine's going in the back. We have a lot to discuss today. So here's the thing. Let me put my goddamn pen down, maybe. God. Let's talk about the music in Radio Rebel. Coffee's almost done. This is my fridge, by the way. This is where I keep all my Dr. Pepper. I literally have one in here I can prove. Look. We're big Dr. Pepper fans over here. It's too hot to drink. We'll let it sit for a little bit. Here's the thing. This is another example of something that I have a deep love and obsession with, even though I understand it's probably pretty cringy and weird. Here's what I love most about the Radio Rebel soundtrack. In its weird, own Disney Channel kind of way, they're able to capture what it feels like to listen to a soundtrack based on a movie that like focuses a lot on music. You think of famous movie soundtracks like the one for Empire Records, or other ones, I don't know. And when I think of movie soundtracks like that, I think of movies that have very obscure but also like very of its time sounding music. It actually does feel like a selection of songs that maybe a teenager would collect over time through like obscure, research into different genres. And like I said, this is its own little Disney Channel version of that. It's not, actually all that like indie or like cutting edge. It really isn't, and I realize that. It's just so clear to me that they have some sort of software where they have all of the music they're allowed to license for movies on, and they just type in keywords like rebel or revolution, and then they just put whatever they find that kind of fits the sort of indie rock 2010s sound that they're going for into like a contender to be on the album, because it's like very obscure in a way only music that you're only allowed to use to license for movies kind of way, if that makes sense. Oh, that is awful. And this idea of only being able to use music that the band itself or the band's record label has let be licensed for music is so fascinating for me, because you find these really obscure, very generic sounding songs by people who probably tried to be big stars and just for whatever reason couldn't get there, and now have just kind of, to get a quick buck, thrown their music out into the pool of songs that can be licensed for movies and TV. Because, some of these songs have real album art and are very clearly made to be like, semi-hits maybe, and they just never got there. Or were just made by bands who probably just thought, like, yeah, let's just throw our music in there just to make some money so we can continue touring. One of my favorite songs that I found off of this album that, like, I genuinely listen to in my free time is the song Stray by The Trues. It's that kind of specific late 2000s kind of indie rock sound that I've always, kind of been a little bit of a sucker for, I'll be honest. One of the more interesting inclusions on the soundtrack is Shay Lee's What Can I Say, who some of you might recognize as a song from Disney Channel's NBT, or Next Big Thing. This was a series of commercial interstitials that was DC's take on shows like American Idol or The Voice, where they would get a group of kids together and have them compete to see who would be the quote-unquote next big thing. Originally, I was going to say they never really did a good job of picking out who was going to be the next big thing, but looking at the different seasons, you start to notice the likes of Chloe and Halle and Casey Ballerini. Although I guess this can be seen as the case of these people just being really talented and determined to make it in the industry, since none of these people really seem to have made it while signed to Disney's record label Hollywood Records. Either way, Shay Lee, who has a very interestingly spelt name, was one of the contestants on NBT, and I'm pretty sure she won since she has this big flashy music video for her song, What Can I Say? Apparently, she wrote this song herself, which is kind of funny because it's an emotional breakup song, kind of like something that seems way too mature for her to be singing. But overall, it's a very boring, awkwardly long pop song that's just dated enough to be charming, and at least not too dated to where I find it cringy to listen to. In a different world, Shay Lee was the next Olivia Rodrigo, and this was her Put Your Hearts Up. But this is the world we live in, where this song is only really remembered as casually being played in the background of Radio Rebel. I checked out her Instagram, and she seems like she's doing really well, and she looks amazing, so good for Shay Lee for continuing to thrive and just be absolutely amazing. I wonder if they had songs for the movies already picked out when they filmed everything, or if Debbie Ryan is just saying random song names and pressing buttons to songs she's never really heard before. Just a random thought. Although I guess the songs from the G's were already made since they had to perform them in the movie, so there you go. The 3 songs made for the G's are Turn It All Around, We So Fly, and Now I Can Be the Real Me. I'm going to talk about these in the order of least high quality to most high quality. So we're going to start with Now I Can Be the Real Me, which I think everyone agrees is probably the worst original song from the movie. Now I Can Be the Real Me is the most obvious and dramatic example of that kind of trope that Disney Channel movies did, especially around this time, where they're like, garbage party music isn't really like true to myself, and boring acoustic ballads is like more real and authentic for some reason. This is a weirdly common sentiment you start to see in like discourse around pop music at this time, and it's weird to see it trickle down into like TV movies. It's quite interesting. This idea that like dance pop music isn't real and slow acoustic ballads are more authentic. Like, this was all written by a couple of 40-year-olds in like a basement somewhere, you know, to make money. Like, none of this is real, okay? That being said, it's not like the worst song I've ever heard before. I'm not going to go out and tell you guys that it's like awful and bad and that you shouldn't listen to it, because especially if you're listening to the entire soundtrack, which I actually do quite often, it's not too shabby. It's just you know what I mean? Especially compared to other songs like Turn It All Around. I think Turn It All Around is the very obvious kind of middle ground between these two songs. It's clear that as the story goes on in the B plot with the G's, that Gavin is slowly losing control in part of the band and his vision, and Gabe is kind of taking over. So in that sense, you can see how one of the first songs they've written is Turn It All Around, where it has that quote-unquote meaningful, real message to it, but it's still a lot more sleek and enjoyable. I mean, all the songs are very sleek. They sound shrink-wrapped. You know, none of it sounds, you know, kind of raw or edgy in any way. But Turn It All Around has that true Jonas Brothers sound to it. And if you guys know me, I love the Jonas Brothers, okay? I'm a Joe bro at the end of the day. I think I referenced the Jonas Brothers multiple times in my Sunny with a Chance video, and I just cut all of it out. And I can't even remember why I did that. The thought isn't coming to my mind right now. But yeah, Turn It All Around is like one of those perfectly fine pop songs that you would probably hear on the radio in 2012 or whatever, and it works just fine. It fits perfectly within the movie. Because yes, it has this message of, you know, if you're feeling down on your luck or you're not happy with your current situation, you know, take control of your life and go forward and, you know, turn it all around, as the chorus says. I guess this is a good example of why, like, poptimism, quote unquote, really became more of a thing in the later 2010s. This song is like, it's almost there. It's like at the point right when Lord is gonna drop, so it's like trying to be in that idea, but it's just not there yet. We're not there yet chronologically, you know? But it at least sounds authentically 2010s. Like, it actually does sound pretty modern to its times, in my opinion. I mean, others may disagree. They might say, like, oh, it's too 2000s sounding, you know. Sounds a little bit too much like early 2000s minivan rock. And, you know, I get that. This cup is hot. Ow. What I'm trying to say is these last two songs are very boring, and I wouldn't really go out of my way to listen to them. Well, I mean, I personally would, because I'm a Radio Rebel obsessor, but, like, the average person would not go out of their way to listen to these songs. I like it. I think it's fine. It works just fine in the movie. The song that transcends all, however, is We So Fly. Awful name to say out loud. It makes me embarrassed to praise it because it's such an awful title. But this song is like actually quite interesting and good. We So Fly is extremely dated, and it sounds like a cut of late 2000s like dance rock when that was trying to be a thing, you know? It honestly fits really well into the genre of crunkcore, in my opinion. Which I know sounds like an insult to a lot of people, but for me, I think that's an accomplishment. I don't have time to get into the crunkcore discourse right now. I know a lot of people hate it, and that's fine, but this song actually does sound like it could be a real pop song. You know what I mean? It has like that kind of Disney Channel fake rock edge where it's like, oh, we have guitars. That means, you know, it's edgy now. This is when guitars are like very close to just being absolutely booted from music altogether. And it's clear the reason why the music has to sound a little bit more authentic and rich is because it's supposed to be performed by a band. Like if this was just Gavin and Gabe like in a basement with a keyboard, then they would make it sound like MGMT if they wanted to. Although I don't think they could, you know, achieve that sound. Too corporate to make, like, parody pop music, you know? Parody pop? Yeah. If the G's weren't, like, a real band, then they probably could just make it sound like Pitbull if they really wanted to. But since they kind of have to have real instruments in the songs to make it fit with the band, it actually does sound a little bit more palatable and less dated. I think of the music from Camp Rock when they're supposed to be making the really cheap and shitty dated like pop music for the Mean Girl, and it just sounds so garbagey because there's nothing to grasp onto. It's just so far away and it's like tinny production. But since there's real drums on the songs and, you know, I really like a little addition to We So Fly is that it's very bass heavy, which, you know, also fits the kind of club sound from around the time. But since Gabe is the one who plays the bass, and this is supposed to be his song where he like takes over control in the band and is like pushing Gavin out and his ideas, it makes sense that it's more bass heavy because he's the one who plays the bass, and so like he's the one constructing the song with his bass. It's actually quite interesting. I think there was like, you know, some real ideas and thoughts put into how we're going to construct these songs based on how they fit into the movie. Which is more than you can say for Camp Rock, for all that matter. Camp Rock is much earlier on in the timeline, though, now that I think about it. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't really consider Radio Rebel a musical, even though it does have a few musical moments, and there is like a band in it. But then again, people don't consider Camp Rock a musical. I'm not sure where people stand on that sense. The second one is definitely a musical, but the first one just has musical moments, and there's actually not that many. I don't know why I'm comparing these two now, all of a sudden. But I do genuinely think that We So Fly is a phenomenal track. Like, I don't know what to tell you. When the bops bop, I can't make the bop not bop. That's all I'm saying. It's a song I want to listen to outside of doing, like, Disney Channel reviews and stuff. So I actually do quite enjoy the Radio Rebel soundtrack, and it's another one of those things where, like, I get it, guys, you know? I'm approaching this with full sincerity and earnesty, and if you want to cringe at me, that's fine. I don't know what to do with that. I don't care about it, I guess. So yes, I deeply enjoy the Radio Rebel soundtrack, and you can fight me on it. I don't care. I'm going to link the playlist of all the songs in chronological order in the description, because the official album that's on streaming services and Spotify and stuff does not have all of the songs that is used in the movie. So I made sure to make a little curation for you guys. And I think it's a fun listen. You know, if you want to feel like a Disney Channel character, pop it on while you're walking to the grocery store or whatever. Especially that opening one. It's so Disney Channel cheese. It's perfect. And I almost forgot to mention the song that Debbie Ryan made for the movie, which is a cover of the Go-Go's We Got the Beat. I quite like We Got the Beat. It's a really great cut of like 80s new wave amazingness. It's very much like a pop culture lexicon song now. Like, you hear it in commercials and movies all the fucking time. So, like, it's very easy to just, like, dismiss it as, like, another commercial song. But it's actually quite interesting. It's a little bit punk in its, you know, origin, but is very, very catchy. I always argued that new wave or post-punk was the true origin of pop-punk, but that's a discussion for another day. I think it's just a really cute and fun track to listen to, but the Disney Channel Debbie Ryan cover they made of the song definitely strips it of any sort of possible edge it might have. It kind of works within the context of the movie, but like I personally feel like it would have felt a lot more cool and ambitious if they did the original version of the song. But I do realize that, Debbie Ryan needed a single to have attached to her to promote the movie with. And the song fits within the theming of the movie, Obviously, I'd prefer just the original version of the song in the movie, but like the cover isn't trying to replace it, obviously. They just needed a lead-off single to have attached to Debbie Ryan. So in that sense, I understand its existence, but it's fine. It's okay. I never go out of my way to listen to it, though. Of course, I'm just going to listen to the original instead of the cover. And I feel like the point of a good cover song is to not replace the original, but kind of have its own little space, where it's like, oh, I have the lyrics stuck in my mind. What version of the song do I want to listen to? And then you can decide. I feel like that's the perfect place where a cover song relies. And Debbie Ryan's cover just doesn't do that for me. But that's okay. I would argue that a lot of these singles, their only real main purpose is to just sell records at the time, and then once the movie's out of advertisement cycle, they don't care about the song anymore. So when it comes to advertising the movie, it works, in a well fine way, but after that, it doesn't have much value. And I think Debbie Ryan, I almost said Demi Lovato. I think Debbie Ryan is a great singer, and I like her music. She has some good music out there, and I kind of wish, she had more opportunity to release music, because if she had a new album or something out, I would totally listen to it, because I feel like she deserved more than this kind of weird Disney Channel cheesy pop music that they gave her. So yeah, soundtrack, good. Movie, good. Now, I know you're probably expecting some sort of negativity in this video, right? I mean, it's a video about Radio Rebel. You can't just be nice the entire time, and I agree. We're going to go talk about the book now. And I have a lot of bad things to say about the book. Believe you me. Hello, everybody. I am very sorry that I am back to the webcam footage. I had previously recorded this part, but the footage was wrong for half of it, so I'm having to redo this specific segment of the video. I'm literally just sitting on my bed, and I'm balancing my computer in the most precarious, awkward situation ever. It's fitting that I lost all the footage for this and that I have to talk about it again, because this is my least favorite topic for this video. That topic being the book that Radio Rebel was based off of. Did you guys know that this movie was based off of a book? Listen, the hair is just not going to look good. I don't have my comfort beanie with me, so we're just going to have to deal with it being awful the whole time. So yes, the Radio Rebel book. It says it right there on the Wikipedia page that Radio Rebel was based off of a book called Shrinking Violet. First of all, am I tilting slowly? Oh my gosh. First of all, there are multiple books called Shrinking Violet, so to find the specific one was actually kind of hard. And two, apparently no one has read this book. On the Wikipedia page where it compares the book to the movie slightly, it says citation needed, which is hilarious because all of the information they quote from the book is on the fucking blurb. Let's read the blurb together, shall we? High school senior Teresa Adams is so painfully shy that she dreads speaking to anyone in the hallways or getting called on in class. But in the privacy of her bedroom with her iPod in hand, she rocks out, doing mock broadcasts for Miami's hottest FM radio station, which happens to be owned by her stepfather. When a slot opens up at the Slam, Tara surprises herself by blossoming behind the mic into a confident, sexy, sweet tea. And to everyone's shock, she's a hit. Even Gavin, the only guy in school who she dares talk to, raves about the mysterious DJ's awesome taste in music. But when the Slam announces a songwriting contest and a prom date with Sweet Tea as the grand prize, Sweet Tea's dream could turn into Tara's nightmare. Yeah, okay. There you go. So as you can tell by the beginning of the book, it seems pretty accurate to the movie until, near the end where it just, becomes a different story entirely. I'll be 100% with you guys, and I feel really bad about this, but I really don't have no other choice. I, didn't get to finish this book before making this video. If you can see here on my tabs system, I only really got 50 pages in. That's for multiple reasons. The main reason being that I hate this book, and I really didn't like the first huge chunk that I had to read. The main reason why is that everything is so stereotypical, and also this book takes place in around 2009 versus the movie, which is like around 2012, and I have never noticed such a difference in pop culture between like that many amount of years until I read this book and compared it to the movie. This book is so 2009 that it's kind of hard to deal with, if I'm being honest. I really hope it doesn't shock you to find out that Radio Rebel actually has more nuance within its story and characters than this book does. And of course, I haven't read the full thing, so I can't be an authority on this. I was hoping to finish it so I could definitively point out every adaptational element and everything that they changed or kept the same, but I can't get through this thing, guys. I'm so sorry. I can't do it. I would have tried to read more to let you guys know, but like I said, I just ran out of time because I kept putting off having to read it because I really didn't enjoy reading it. Plus, I had like a bunch of reading to do for school and shit. So I did skip to around right here, and I did pick up on, some of the more back half plots of the book. It changes drastically near the middle to the ending part, kind of like how it did on the blurb. So yes, Tara's real name is Teresa in this book, and the way that they spell the shortened version of her name is T-E-R-E, so every time I'm reading it, I just read it as Terry or Tari and not Tara, so I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced in the book. I guess also I should mention right away that there is no evil principal or outside authority figure who is trying to take down Sweet Tea in this version. Radio Rebel is completely made up for the movie. So all of the conflict in this book is completely interpersonal and has really nothing to do with any outside force trying to take Tara down, which definitely makes more sense since she's on an official radio station. If she was actually controversial in any way, the radio would just hire a new host, so it's clear that she was never actually making that many waves considering she was staying on the network, although since her stepfather is the person who runs it, maybe that could be a reason why. One of the biggest things early on, and I don't know if you can see because of my shitty webcam, but I have a lot of pink tabs, and in my tabbing system, pink means bad, mainly just because so many characters are so extremely stereotypical. I haven't seen much of Stacy in the book, but from what I have, she seems like the most basic, boring description of a mean, popular girl you could hear of. Apparently she's on the volleyball team, and she wears tube tops and short skirts and puts on lip gloss and wears lime green prom dresses and stuff. And Tara is extremely not like other girls and constantly makes fun of her for being promiscuous or, I don't know, liking boys. Let me read to you a passage that grinded my gears. It's near the end, where I skipped to. It's in chapter 25 if anyone cares, by the way. Also, yes, I know, I bought this book online for $3, and it's littered with library stickers, so I really hope someone didn't steal this and sell it to me. I really hope the library, threw it out of its discard pile. You're such bitches, lesbos, Stacy says as she flies out of there, awful syntax. If the cheerleaders weren't gathered around a toilet bowl, they would have thought Stacy was talking to them. Chicken, Audrey calls after her. Why did you say that? Now she'll come back here with her posse. Forget about that idiot. She's too drunk to remember. Audrey opens the door for me. I'm surprised she was allowed out of the house, I say. Audrey laughs. Why? Because she's such a threat to society? No, because I heard her talking a couple of times to her dad, and he sounds pretty strict. Maybe he just doesn't want his little princess to turn into a slut. Too late, I point out to a hotel phone booth in the corner where I see the back of a person in a lime dress making out with what looks like Frank. Gross. I've had enough. You can see why I don't like reading this book, right? But yeah, Stacy is described in the most boring possible way, and wait till you hear about Gavin's description. You're gonna fucking keel over. I say thanks and look up, but Gavin's already out the door, tucking a piece of his chin-length hair behind his ear. They also describe him as a metal-looking guy. What do you think of Gavin Tam? I nudge Audrey. The metal guy over there? She points to the side of the building. I slap her hand down. Yeah, but he likes rap too. Okay, the rap metal guy. What about him? This book is hard to get through, guys. Tara's relationship with her mother is a very, very big part of the book. Apparently, Tara's mother got pregnant with her when she was 18 years old before she graduated high school, and because of that, she has a stunted growth and basically acts like a teenager. Also, she's extremely emotionally abusive to Tara. Content warning for discussion of weight loss, but at a certain point in the book, Tara describes that she used to be overweight, and that what happened is when her mom was getting married to her current stepdad, who was like a full-blown cowboy, who was the guy who runs Slam, the one thing Tara's mom asked for her to do was to lose weight so she could be her maid of honor or bridesmaid or something. So she did. She lost like 20-30 pounds or something, and she says she's been able to keep it off, and like that's why she feels slightly less unpopular or something like that. So yeah, that's very not cool, and it's not even described as like a bad thing. Maybe it is later on in the book. I don't know, I didn't finish it, but early on it just seemed like just another thing, just parents can be so demanding sometimes, and it's like, that's bad. Tara constantly feels like her mom is judging her, and no matter what she does, it'll always be wrong. Whether it's her eating too much after school, or not getting good enough grades. Actually, her mom doesn't even care about the grades, I don't think. She basically describes her mom as an extremely shallow person who only cares about outside looks. It just overall makes me very uncomfortable. To Mom, looks and first impressions are everything. That's probably one of the reasons why I'm such an introvert. I never wanted to say something wrong when I was little, gave the wrong idea. I didn't want to make Mom angry, so I figured it was better to keep my mouth shut rather than talking. I guess after a while I just got used to it. I was comfortable with my role as the quiet observer. So in this version of the story, her overzealous mother is the reason why she's so shy. Another reason why I don't really like this book is that, while Tara does tell us a lot about her life, it feels a little bit too obvious. And also, she talks about the radio in the most weirdest way possible. Like, we pick up that she's a fan of the radio and that she consistently listens to it. But whenever there's a new character introduced, she immediately assesses whether they would be a good radio show host or not, which is extremely silly. Like, there's a point in the book where she's describing one of her teachers having a boring monotone voice, and she's like, he would be awful for the radio. And it's like, I don't think he wants to be on the radio, Tara. Another one of the big things that was changed is that Tara wasn't broadcasting to the internet or anything. She was literally just doing mock radio shows in her bedroom by herself, like to the walls. She wasn't even doing it like to Audrey. At least in this version of the book, it doesn't have the complicated part of like her having to be like an internet personality before moving to the radio, so there's that. So like I said, I don't know what happens between here and here, but based on the blurb and what I read while I was here, there's a songwriting contest that the radio show holds. So I guess you write like a full song and you submit it, and if your song is the best one, what you win is a date with Sweet Tea, or like a prom, you go to prom with her, which I guess it's only for high schoolers then. It's like a junior league thing. So I don't know how Tara feels about this songwriting contest, if she thinks she's being pimped out or whatever. But what I do know is that, of course, it is Gavin who wins. So they end up, being on stage together. And she reveals that she's Sweet Tea on stage at prom, like it did in the movie, except it's not that she wins prom queen. It's that she has to go on the date with whoever won the thing. So I don't think her secret identity is as big of a deal in the book as it is in the story, because, like I said, there's no real threat. It's just something that she feels more comfortable with. If she has that sort of, personality dynamic like in the movie in this book, I don't know. There's a whole bunch afterwards until we get to the final pages, which I did read. I'm one of those people who, once I start a book, I have to read, the final 2 pages for me to feel sane. I know you can murder me all you want. I don't care. It's something I enjoy. At the end of the book, her and Gavin are making out, I guess. And this is the final part of the book. What's the thing you're most afraid of? I run my fingers through Gavin's hair. Not living up to my mom's needlepoint sayings, he laughs. Funny guy, this Gavin. I elbow him lightly in the ribs. No, really. Not being able to play my music every day. He leans over and brushes a strand of hair from my face. What about you? What are you most afraid of? I sink into his deep onyx eyes. They're warm and inviting, and a snowball that's been inside of me for so many years melts away, and I realize what it is I no longer
fear.
Speaking my mind. So there's the Radio Rebel book. Like I said, I'm so sorry I didn't finish it. I was hoping maybe I could rely on a Goodreads or Wikipedia summary, but like I said, no one's read this book, so there's no summary anywhere. So if you happen to have read Shrinking Violet, specifically the one by Danielle Joseph, because there are multiple Shrinking Violet books out there, as I learned when I tried to buy this thing, if you finished it, please let me know anything that I left out, and if there's any more interesting comparisons between the movie and the book. So I guess most of what is in the movie was just made up, and that this isn't even an in-name only adaptation because they literally changed the name. It's just the character's name that they kept for the story. And even then, Tara's name isn't Teresa. It's like, how is this even a book adaptation? It clearly isn't. I have no idea where they could have gotten all of the other stuff from the movie. Oh well, I guess I'll just go get my copy of Radio Rebel and just start editing this thing. I'll see ya. Let's watch a movie, everybody. Just for fun. Don't look at it. No warning. Full screen. We only watch movies in full screen around these parts. I've been meaning to use the TV in a video. I finally get to. And I have a good enough camera to where it doesn't look like absolute crap behind me. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the movie Pump Up the Volume. It's a Christian Slater piece. I'm pretty sure it came out in 1989. And the plot, I'm just going to give a very, very brief run through. Actually, I should read the fucking back of the disc. This is so old that is when like these cases were made of cardboard and stuff. This part is supposed to like click in, but it's broken. I bought this off eBay for like $3. By day, Mark Hunter is a painfully shy kid in a small Arizona town, but by night, he's Hard Harry, the cynical, uncensored DJ of a pirate radio station. Idolized by his high school classmates who are unaware of his real identity, Harry becomes a hero with his fiercely funny monologues on sex, love, and rock and roll. Get it? Instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it's sex, love, and rock and roll? Isn't that amazing? Yeah, he exposes the corrupt school, he gets arrested at the end. There's the plot of this movie. So I don't know if you guys saw the video uploaded to YouTube by Kean Carlisle and Amanda Todd Hunter, where they talked about how a movie called The Sleepover was a like weirdly children's remake of The Hangover, but was also based off of a book. Yeah, that's the same for Radio Rebel, and I don't know if anyone really knows that. It's actually called The Slumber Party, and they made a joke in the video about how it should have been called The Sleepover, and I guess I just internalized that. Either way, it's a great video, and I think you guys should watch it, although you probably already have if you're watching this one. And a lot of stuff about the movie starts to make more sense once you realize that it is a remake or like a reinterpretation of this movie right here. My only problem with Pump Up the Volume, I mean, I think it's a really good movie. I saw it at a very interesting point in my life. It was right when I started college and I was still living at home with my parents. And one thing that I find very interesting about it is just how Gen X it is. I was so close to making a video about Pump Up the Volume and then just very casually mentioning in the background that, hey, Radio Rebel's a remake of it, but I hadn't really started talking about Disney Channel on my channel yet, so I thought talking about this movie would have made more sense. But in retrospect, the other way around is how it ended up working out. Because for those who don't know, my first ever video was on Heathers. Don't watch it. I mean, listen to it, but don't watch the video part. I'm baking a pie in the video, and it's kind of weird. I just didn't want to be on camera back then. But one of the most notable things about this movie is just how Gen X it is. I mean, his fucking radio name is Hard Harry, or Harry Hard-On. The fuck am I supposed to do with that? It's like weirdly explicit, and he pretends to jack off on the air, which is just like really weird. Also, this was Christian Slater right after Gleaming the Cube, which is another great Christian Slater movie. I swear one day I will find a way to talk about it. I love it so much. You can tell because his hair is still kind of blonde. I can't show that. Oops. If I end up blurring shit in the background just momentarily, it's because they do some absolute bonkers stuff in this movie, okay? He has a pirate radio station that he airs in the middle of the night that all of his classmates listen to, and he has a secret identity, and people send him mail that he reads on the air. Sounds a bit familiar, don't you think? It also makes sense as to why all the local kids know about his radio show, is because it's a pirate radio station that's broadcasted locally. So it's only people in the local area who can hear his broadcast, which is why they know which school he goes to. Because I think, like, this field near the school is where the radio signal picks up the best, even though he's doing it from his house. Also, by the way, to pirate your own radio station is extremely illegal. I'm pretty sure it's like a federal law. You can't just like pick a station and start broadcasting on it, and that's literally what he does. So it also makes what he's doing very dangerous, because he's also being like very like anti-government, anti-corporation just in general by literally breaking the law. So there's some real stakes behind his secret identity. And that's where it comes in from Radio Rebel, because in the book, I'm gonna get the prop. I have a prop. In the fucking book, there is no outside source that is threatening Radio Rebel's existence as a radio show host. It is purely an intrapersonal drama. So I was like, where did that fucking come from? It came from Pump Up the Volume, okay? There is an evil principal in this movie. In this movie, the evil principal is expelling students who don't fit a pristine look and are having low test grades, so that I think the school will get more funding or something. Basically, she doesn't want any undesirables at her school. So like people who act out, people who get bad grades. There's a girl who's pregnant who gets expelled. Yeah, it's kind of rough. And, you know, I will give this movie props for, you know, premonitions, because this is definitely something that a school would do in modern day, because like test scores, you know, in a post No Child Left Behind world are very important. Mark Hunter is a very shy, very unaware of his surroundings individual, and in this movie he has just been plucked from his home life and moved to Arizona. And the set of like where he lives is also very interesting, because it's specifically like a neighborhood still being built. So he's just surrounded by like half-built houses and construction. So like his world is not, you know, in set motion like it should be. Which, you know, aligns with Tara, who just got a new father, and she's just shy in general, but of course there's not like as many details as that. It is a dcom after all. So yeah, a lot of elements that were not present within the book are present within this movie. The love interest in this one does have a fond affection for Harry Hardon. I don't want to say his radio name ever in my whole life. And just like in the movie, since he's so used to being anonymous, he is completely extremely obvious with the fact that he is the secret radio host, because literally just no one pays attention to him. But as soon as one person starts noticing things, he's immediately found out, which happens in Radio Rebel. The love interest is the person who does that. She confronts him and she learns, just because he's not smart with it either. There are a lot more serious topics in this movie than in other ones, which I think is kind of like, you know, I should give like a content warning for. The people he inspires are going through much more difficult things than like possibly being bullied at school or not feeling confident. Like there's a kid who does commit suicide in this movie, and I think Mark Hunter's, you know, monologue about how suicide is bad was pretty decent, especially because this is only a few years after Heathers, which also handles the topic of teen suicide. And I think this movie has a more poignant message on the idea of suicide versus Heathers, which was more about like, you know, the public outcry and like the media attention surrounding it, and not really about like why a kid would do something like that. It does make Mark Hunter as a radio show host a lot more inspiring, because he's actually saying shit other than just like, music is the soundtrack to our lives. Like, good job, Radio Rebel, keep going there. And in this movie, he does actually have real consequences to face for what he's saying. And in Radio Rebel, it never really felt too serious. Like, yes, the principal, it has a no distraction policy and doesn't want people having their devices around. Boy, would she hate the next coming up years when everyone starts to have smartphones. But the whole school getting together and starting to follow Mark Hunter's kind of regime against the system does happen in Radio Rebel, like I said. but with dance parties instead of, spray painting walls and stuff. He doesn't have any friends in this version. There's a lot of quiet, silent sequences of him just like doing decisions on his own. Like they let the film storytelling do the telling instead of having like a character that he can bounce off of until he gets the love interest, of course. So like Audrey and Gavin are kind of like both versions of the one girl. I don't know why I can't remember her name. Is it like Anna or something? I like this scene a lot because the teacher punches a kid in the face. It's like, it's hilarious. Who would ever fucking do that? You're not supposed to do that, faculty. Huh. Isn't that wild? Yeah, the principal does get in trouble in this movie. I don't think she gets arrested, but like her lies are revealed, and luckily it's not by Mark. I'm glad that there's some teachers at the school who realize that something's wrong once they start to pick up that like all of the students are very angry, and they're the ones who reveal that she's, intentionally expelling students who she doesn't want to be there, and that's how I think she gets arrested at the end. Mark gets arrested at the end, that's for sure. So at the very end, they have a chase scene where the cops are trying to find him, so he takes his pirate radio show on the road for one final broadcast, and, Mark is relatively pretty emo about it all, and, he gives one final message. I think his catchphrase was "talk hard," which, it's kind of cool, I guess. It's interesting. Since he's broken many a law in doing his radio shows, he does get arrested at the end. Probably to face like 10 to 15 years in the clink, but, at least he inspired a generation. The whole Radio Rebel getting revealed thing is from the book. It's so interesting how every other scene swaps from the book to the movie, and then from the book again into the movie. And then the most stupid parts are the parts the writers themselves came up with. It's so weird. It's like they took these two existing IPs, both which were not friendly for the Disney Channel, and mushed them together and then gave it a G rating. It's borderline madness, really. I'd actually recommend you watch this movie. Like I said, warning for all like the dick jokes. I think that's just a very Gen X thing, or maybe even like a millennial kind of thing. Overall, it's just very, it's very like childishly explicit, you know what I mean? Where it's like, haha, what if I name myself Harry Hardon and have dicks everywhere? Like, I don't think it works, really. But I definitely liked it a whole lot more than the book, because the book hurt my soul. It was not a good time. This is definitely a lot more, nuanced. It's definitely a more nuanced story than Radio Rebel. And Radio Rebel is somehow a more nuanced story than Shrinking Violet. So, I guess in that sense, it's like the perfect middle ground between, all of these things. It makes me wonder if, like, someone who worked at Disney Channel watched this movie and thought, hey, we should just remake this for the Disney Channel, because they were like out of ideas, but then they were told like you can't do that. So they used this book as like a cover-up, basically. Like, oh no, we're doing a book adaptation of a Scholastic book. Is this a Scholastic book? No, it's an MTV book. But like, this is still pretty explicit, so I don't know. I guess this is technically a children's book, even though, again, it is a little more explicit than like your average, children's book. It's still something you could read like in middle school and it would still be fine. But I think that's what Disney Channel does. They've probably done this with more movies other than just The Sleepover and Radio Rebel. They've probably done multiple. Isn't that crazy to think about? So yes, we've uncovered a Disney Channel formula. What you do is you make a remake of a rated R movie, and then to cover up your tracks, you say it's a book adaptation. And the only things you really take from the book are the names of the characters and possibly how they look and their dynamic. But other than that, you keep everything the exact same from the original movie. They probably did add more things from the book into Radio Rebel because this movie ends in such a way that you couldn't really have that be on Disney Channel. Like, you can't have Debbie Ryan be arrested at the end. But they changed so much about the plot in Shrinking Violet that you can't have the ending of the prom scene like it was in this movie. So what they did is they just made it up. They just made up a bunch of bullshit. They just did a Spartacus thing, which we've already talked about, so I won't get into it now. I honestly think the only reason why this comparison hasn't really happened yet, or I haven't seen it in other YouTube videos or like even a fucking Reddit thread or anything, is because this movie is extremely hard to find. There's a reason why I bought the DVD, and that's because it's literally on no streaming services. You can't even like rent it on Amazon or YouTube or anything. It's become non-existent in our modern day. And so that's why I bought the DVD of it. I almost got the Gleaming the Cube, Pump Up the Volume double feature, but it was too expensive. I think the reason why The Sleepover was so immediately called out is because The Hangover is a much more popular movie. Like, it's much more well remembered. So, and also the naming was literally the same. Instead of The Hangover, it was The Sleepover. They really got kind of lazy with that. They were a lot more sneaky and subtle with this adaptation. I'll tell you guys how I figured this out, because I really wouldn't have if it wasn't for an extremely weird chain of events. What ended up happening is that I randomly remembered the movie Gleaming the Cube. I always knew about Gleaming the Cube, and that's because photos of Christian Slater as like an edgy skater punk dude bro, is very popular on Tumblr and other internet spaces. So I had learned that it was the movie Gleaming the Cube. But then one day, randomly, I think I was like hearing about the new Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game, and I was like, wasn't he in a movie? And then like I tried to remember what movie that was, and I was like, it's the fucking Christian Slater skater movie. So I, tried to find a copy of it online. There's an upload of it on YouTube for free. Go check it out. Wikipedia calls it neo-noir, which, I mean, yeah. I think it was from the YouTube upload, but I'm not too sure. But I saw a comment of someone commenting about Gleaming the Cube, and they said, this is a really great movie. This and Pump Up the Volume are very underrated Christian Slater movies. And I was like, I've seen the poster for Pump Up the Volume when I stalk Christian Slater's IMDb page, because that's what a normal person would do, right? So I looked up Pump Up the Volume on IMDb, and when the trailer immediately plays, because that's what happens when you like open up a movie on IMDb, the trailer immediately starts playing, and I decided to listen to it since I had no idea what it was about. When I saw that trailer, it blew my mind. And so I knew about this for like, I would say a year, where I just kind of sat on this information. I eventually bought the movie on eBay and watched it and was like, wow, yeah, there's a lot of comparisons to Radio Rebel. Anyways, and just went on with my life, and then quietly started making YouTube videos in between that. And that's when Kean Carlisle uploaded his YouTube video. And when he did, I was like, okay, we're expediting the Radio Rebel video. It has to come out now. I have to talk about this because there's precedent. Because I haven't seen The Sleepover yet. I'm waiting till I get to it in my dcom rewatch, where I watch every dcom. Look out for that. It's coming to the channel very far away from now. So yeah, I had no idea The Sleepover had done what Radio Rebel did a decade before. So that's why I'm mentioning it now. I hope we all realize how weird this is, and I hope you gained a new appreciation for Radio Rebel and a new movie recommendation. Okay, that's all. I'm very tired and I must leave now. I swear, I forgot how much fucking TVs used to hum. This thing is like making noise.